I always get excited. We are doing another episode of the Speakeasy podcast. My lighting sucks horribly today because I'm sitting in a different part of the room. And so I'm going to look like a dark person, like a dark circle. You might see me, you might not. But I want you to hear this statement. We need to have a conversation about our missing children. And, people often say, okay, well, it's not really a problem for me because my children aren't running away. My children aren't the ones missing. My children. But we forget that at this point, it's not your child. It's not to say that it will never be your child. So I have an amazing guest for today. We're going to have an amazing conversation. But guys, you know the drill. If you're catching this, I am your host, Zamiz Press, the voice coach, not a voice coach, but the voice coach, professional speaker, certified life coach, and Amazon bestselling author. And this is Speak Easy, where we talk about the behind the scenes of being the speaker or the author. And listen, I already told you today's topic, so you definitely want to make sure that you go and share out the broadcast. So let me introduce you to my guest for today. My guest today is Miss Marie White. Hello, Marie.
Hello.
I am so excited to have her on for today. Guys, I'm going to let Marie tell you a little bit about herself, and then we're going to dive right into this topic. So tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, Zamiz, thank you for having me on. I'm an author also, which is awesome. I love getting to speak with other authors because we know the intricacies. We know the behind the scenes, how glamorous our lives really are. Not. I have written 7 books. I've been a part of 8 books, and most of them have gone to bestseller. And the book that we're really focusing right now on is called Strength for Parents of Missing Children, which has been a bestseller and also won an award. And it's for anybody that's dealing with a missing child due to divorce, abduction, runaways, getting taken into foster care, or even adult children who are drug addicted and missing from their parents' lives. So that's who I am.
And yes, and so we see that this topic of our missing children goes a whole lot deeper than what you probably thought when you tuned in. But that being said, you guys know that we're very transparent on this broadcast. We go deep sometimes. So if it's a little deep for you, I understand. I definitely appreciate you coming and sharing. But guys, if you're able to, I want you commenting. I want you in the comments. I want your real opinions about this topic. Because when we think about our children, right now there are so many things going on with our children as a whole. Our children, there's a high suicide rate. Our children are going through a lot with drug addiction and abuse. There's a lot with oh my goodness, right now with the high schools and middle schools going through so much, where some of them are scared to go to school. I know that feeling of getting that call and saying, hey, there's a gun scare at the school. Or for us, it was not too recently that we got a text message and it was circulating that somebody was threatening to bring a gun to school and had pictures of it. Well, guess what? It's very real, although it hasn't, it may not be real for everybody just yet, but it is a very real situation. So with that being said, I love that when we talk about missing children, we're not just talking about one perspective.
Right.
Because there's so much going on here. So when you think about the missing children and how much it has grown, what do you think is a huge factor in, us not, for one, a huge factor in us not wanting to talk about the missing children, but a huge factor in us not being able to help the parents in this situation?
Well, I think you asked an excellent question, Zamiz. That's the biggest thing. I actually was thinking about this all this morning. The biggest thing is shame on the parents. I think that, that is, Satan's big tactic is really just to make you feel like you are the only one going through this. Nobody could relate and nobody will understand. So if you tell somebody something's going on with your kid, they're going to be like, wow, you're like a terrible parent and like you deserve this or you did something wrong, and not realizing bad things happen to good people too. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. Okay. You can be the best parent in the world and somebody drives by in a van and picks up your kid. That is not your fault. Somebody hurts your child. That is not your fault. You get divorced and the other parent keeps you from your child for years. That is not your fault. Okay. There are times when it is not the parent's fault. And because everyone's so afraid people will think it's their fault, nobody says anything. Like I go to conferences and meet people and they're like, what do you write about? And when I tell them this book in particular, because I'm, really promoting it right now, I'm thinking they're not going to have any, connection to that. And then they'll ask more questions. And I'm thinking, wow, they really seem excited or interested in this topic. And then they'll go, well, because I have a child I haven't seen in 2 years because we got divorced and my wife's kept him from me. And you're just like, it's everywhere. Everyone is dealing with a child that's not with them.
And I definitely agree. I know that we see the stress, we see the strain. Let's be honest, there's no manual on how to be the perfect parent. If there is, I didn't get my copy and somebody needs to give me a link to get my copy. But there's no such thing as the perfect parent. There's no such thing as this booklet that's going to teach you how to be the perfect parent. Because for one, and I learned this in one of my classes that I was taking for social behavioral health, each of your children has a different parent. And I was like, okay, so I don't have multiple personalities. So how exactly does that work? This whole different parent. We have to understand the times change. You grow and you learn. It's a journey. It's an experience. So for those parents that haven't had that conversation about what's going on with their child, what's that one thing that you would say to them to say, okay, having the conversation doesn't make you a bad parent?
What's amazing is when you start to open up a little bit, and I know you know this with your journey, when you start to open up a little bit, you kind of feel people out. Can I share my story or a little bit of my story with them and kind of see how they react? And if you meet somebody that's very closed off and, well, every time a child's missing, it's always the parent's fault or whatever. Okay, maybe that's not the person to share it with. But what actually will happen is as you start to pull off the barriers that you have made and the wall you put around yourself that you won't let anybody in, as you start to open up a little bit, you'll start to find out people aren't as judgmental as you thought they were. They aren't looking at you going, you are a horrible person. How could that have happened? They end up going, oh, I know somebody else who's going through that, or I went through that, or yes, my aunt is going through that right now, or something where they go, I understand, and you really aren't alone.
It's so powerful. I just was watching a show on Netflix and it's called 7 Seconds. And it's about a child being killed and, the parents, everything that they go through. And, seeing it from that perspective, because we don't know everything that a parent goes through when they have a child that's abducted, a child that's abused, a child that's on drugs. We don't know all of the emotional things that they go through, the anger, the self-hate, the frustration, the fear. It's like, oh my goodness, like I don't understand how their heads can hold everything that they're going through in that moment. So it's difficult being, the support for them because you don't know how to approach them. You don't want to say, hey, I heard your kid's not doing well, or you don't have your child. Like you don't know how to start that conversation. So what would you suggest as a way to start that conversation for someone that you see from the outside in may be going through something and they may not have their child?
I think just, being there for somebody, if you were to see that, let's say there's somebody at school and you've noticed that, they have 2 kids or whatever, and all of a sudden all you see them with is one, and you haven't seen that child in a while, then maybe just approaching them with, hey, I haven't seen your son in a while. Is everything okay? Or do you, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Or is there, how can I support you? Is something going on where you just need somebody to talk to? I mean, really, it's just being, as you know, just a friend and just caring about them and making sure they know ahead of time. You're not there to judge them and be part of the problem, but you're there to support them with what they're going through, because sometimes it makes all the difference. Sometimes the difference between someone taking their own life and not taking their life is knowing that there's somebody else out there that cares about them.
That's a huge statement. I know that when I went through everything with my girls being molested, it was a good girlfriend of mine that just happened to call, and we were talking, and I told her what was going on, and she was there with me in court. She sat by me. She actually gripped me up so I didn't get thrown out of the courtroom. But she sat by me in that moment because she had actually just graduated from law school. So she knew the ins and outs from the law perspective. And she was able to say to me, okay, this is what that means. Okay, this is what they're talking about. Yes. Whereas before, if I would have been there, it would have been me and the advocate. Yeah. And the advocate doesn't know me from a can of paint. And so that wouldn't have helped very much. Yes. That wouldn't have helped very much in those emotional moments. You need somebody that can literally say, okay, I got you. Now yes. Listen, I might have to hurt you a little bit because I'm going to hold you. You're not going to be able to let go. But I think that was one of the things that got me through that whole court case, because it was literally, I can tell you that there were moments in that court case, I don't remember what happened. I completely have moments of that court case where I blacked out. I can't tell you what happened, but there's things that stood out in my mind. And that moment where she grabbed me was one of those moments that stood out in my mind. Wow.
And I feel like this is actually a big thing, is that people feel like, oh, well, you've been through this, and I'm sure you get this too. You've been through this traumatic thing. I can't relate to it. Your problems are bigger than mine. And I'm just going, no, you know what? We all have problems. It doesn't matter that having a child that was abducted is what I have to deal with, and that you've had to deal with the things in your life and in your daughter's lives. All of our pain hurts. All of us feel alone. All of us need support. All of us feel like we're the only ones going through this, and all of us just want to be loved and supported and accepted. That's it. You don't have to go through the same thing. Maybe you're going through bankruptcy. You know what? That's traumatic. You can relate to some of what I'm going through based on that. We don't have to compare what each of us has going on. We just have to be there for each other.
Oh, I love that. Yes, indeed. Because you may never understand what somebody is going through. Yeah. But just those simple words, or that simple moment of you being there in the midst of it all, it's like, okay, I look up and I have some support. And literally, as I was watching the show, one of the things is, even though they were a married couple, they were together, this ripped them apart. Yeah. And you really do feel like you're alone, even if you have somebody there sometimes. Yes. You feel absolutely alone. You feel alone, isolated. You feel like nobody is going to understand exactly what you're going through, or the pain that you're feeling. And then because you feel alone, when you see other people start to shut down, it just enforces that. Yes. It enforces it. And I think people around us don't really always understand that. And it's interesting because I have like so many different perspectives of it, from going through the molestation with my girls. And then I'm doing kinship care for my sister, and, looking at everything with the, foster care system. And it's just like, you see so many different angles and so many different perspectives of it that you're just like, okay, I can't have blinders on when I'm handling people.
Yes. Yeah, and that people are always hurting. Everyone you meet is hurting for some reason. Whether it's physically they're going through something, or emotionally they're going through something, or mentally they're going through something, everyone is hurting. And the most we can do is just be compassionate to them and loving. And one thing that it's really funny, I started doing this like years ago, and I don't even know what got me started, but like, okay, let's say you and I are walking down the street together. We're going to go somewhere, do something. We're walking down the street and we see somebody and they have on an outfit that they should not be wearing. Okay. You're like, holy cow, what made you think that was okay to wear that? That looks terrible. So you and I may look at each other and be like, what? Oh my gosh, what was that? Okay. We think that's okay. Like, we're not, saying you're a terrible person that's wearing that. We're just kind of going, holy cow. Okay. But what if, and this is, like I said, I started doing this a couple years ago. What if instead of doing that, we took every time that I pass by somebody and I see, oh my gosh, that purple just makes your skin pop. It looks incredible. And actually tell them. And just say, as you're walking down the street to some random stranger, my family's looking at me like, Mom, you are insane. My husband's like, I'm not with her. But I'll just be like, that looks awesome on you. You should wear that color more often. And just keep on going. Like, when you were at the darkest moments, when things in your life were all falling down and you didn't know how you were going to make it one more minute, had you been in line at the store and someone said something like that to you, what it could have done for your day, what it could have done for your self-esteem and for your self-worth to go, yeah, I'll stand a little straighter. Somebody said something nice and they said something helpful. Like, if we make a point to do that, it could change the world.
Definitely. It's like, oh my goodness, somebody noticed me. I'm not invisible.
Yes.
I'm not invisible.
Yes.
And that can make all the difference with making somebody feel as though they're not invisible. I love that part. So, and let's go back to talking about, when we think about the whole idea of a child being missing and how broad that scape is. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to writing this book about it.
Well, 3.5 years ago, our toddler was abducted. And so, nobody can prepare you for that moment. Nobody can make you ready to face that. No matter how many movies you see or how many times you see a news story, nobody has you completely prepared for that moment. When it happens, it comes out of nowhere. It's like being run over by a freight train. And you really don't know what to do. I mean, in that moment, you are just all the stress hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol rushing through you. It took me 3 days. 3 days. I mean, I'm a relatively intelligent person. It took me 3 days to figure out I was going through trauma and that it was okay not to be okay. Like, for those first 3 days, I couldn't get hardly anything past my lips. I just wanted to vomit all the time. And I'm like, I can't do that. I have to be strong. I have to be strong. I have to be strong. We have to find our child. And then after 3 days, like, wait a minute. It's okay not to be okay. This is traumatic. That's probably why you want to vomit. But there was no guidebook. There was nothing to tell me, this is what you expect. This is what's going to happen. This is how you're going to feel. Like you said earlier, to be laying in bed at night with my husband there next to me in the bed and still feel alone, to still hurt, to still not be able to relate to what somebody else is going through because you're two different people going through the same event, two completely different ways. It doesn't really matter that you're both in the same house. You're not on the same page all the time. And so, we made it day by day and hour by hour and continued on waiting every day for there to be word that our child would be home. Do you leave the house? Do you not leave the house? Do you run the street, but then you're not at the house? So if someone tries to return your child, you're not there. Like, do you leave? Do you not leave? Who do you call? Where do you go? It's just a never ending nightmare. And that moment that every parent has when you're at the grocery store and, your child tucks behind your leg or behind the cart just for a second and you're like, oh my gosh, where are they? Like, that moment never ends. It goes on forever. And no one tells you how you can cope with the fact that your body is internally out of control. Your thoughts are racing. You've got stress hormones that never should have lasted that long in your body going on constantly. And you're wondering every moment what's happening to your child. And that's why I started writing. And before I started writing, I really was just crying out to God going, please tell me what to do with this pain. It's been 4 months. I'm beginning to wonder if my child is not going to be returned right away. And so if this is the new normal, what is it you want me to do with this pain? And that's when I started doing a YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 viewers, and wrote the guidebook we always wish we could have had.
And you know what? That's a lot. That is so much to endure. That's so much to talk about. There's so much to handle, because literally every parent has had that moment of where it just takes your breath away. Oh my goodness, where is my child?
Yes.
And so I was talking to someone a while ago in an interview, and I was telling them about how, you know, I was home, but my children were with my mother, and my son had decided that he was thirsty. So he told my mother that he was thirsty. He wanted something to drink, and I guess she didn't move fast enough. Well, they were on the boardwalk, and so he went to go get something to drink. He was about 3, and they were like scrambling, trying to find him, and all up and down the boardwalk. They found an officer, and they call it in over the walkie-talkie. And the officer says, "Oh, he's at the Hard Rock Cafe." And my mother's like, "He's where?" "At the Hard Rock Cafe." And she says she walks into the Hard Rock Cafe, and he's sitting on one waitress's lap while another waitress is holding a cup so he can drink something.
Oh my God.
But it's something to drink. But that fear in that moment.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-mm.
Because not only was it going on, but here it is. I was in Philadelphia at the time, and they were in New Jersey.
Yeah. What can you do from there?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Yeah.
And it's literally, you're at your job, you're looking around, you're like, do I leave? Do I stay? Do I wait for them to tell me that what do I do? And then you're trying to think of all these processes. Okay, what's the process for, looking for a child that's missing? And it's like you literally, all of these things start rambling through your head, and you cannot think clearly at all.
No.
It's just like 90,000 things going through your mind, and you can't have a conscious conversation. You can't have a clear thought. It's just like, what is going on here? How do we, I don't know. Am I going left? Am I going right? Do I get in the car? Do I get in the bus? What's my name?
Yep. Exactly.
Like, you get to that point. And so I can definitely, on that perspective, I can definitely feel and understand how that, can be very traumatic for any parent.
Well, and even like you just said, going through the court system like that you went through, there are tons, like millions of parents out there right now where there's been a split up or a divorce, and you've got 2 parents who are not abusive. And one parent is going to say, you know what? I'm not going to let you ever see your kids again. And so the other parent is going through having children that they know where they are, but they can't get to. Because in most places, every once in a while I hear an exception, but in most places, when somebody keeps the children from the other parent, the law will not get involved. And so you're going to court after court after court, and the judge is saying joint custody, and the other parent's going, not going to happen. And then when you go to pick up that child, they're like, nope, it's not going to happen. Or they make false accusations against that parent. And then the police are there, and the police don't know what to do. Like, I don't know who to believe. I'm not really sure what's happening. It's just a mess. And you've got parents who can't go fix the problem. They're going to have to be in court for 6 years fighting this before they can get the children they legally have the right to see. So they've got to all of a sudden have this self-control to not go over and abduct their own children that they already are their children. Whew.
Exactly. So then we have, it's so many different circumstances, and oh my goodness, when you're in it, it's chaos.
It is.
But now let's talk about the after effect, because we have to know that at some point the chaos starts to die down a little bit, not much. But it's also in those moments afterwards that the chaos dies down, but so does the support.
Yes. Yeah. And the big question, and I know you'll be able to relate to this also, is that parents are looking at this, and I'm just an open book. So whatever I'm thinking just comes out. But in the book, I say the things that nobody ever wants to say. Like, as parents, as the months and the years click by and we wonder what's coming home. 90% of missing children come home. But each day, a parent takes their own life due to the terror and the pain of waiting for that child. So if you do the math, that means children are coming home to a family where there's no parent there. They're gone because they've died. They've killed themselves. But you also have parents who are also terrified of what their children are going to be like when they come home. I mean, gonna love them regardless, gonna be there regardless, but what kind of broken child is coming home? Will I be a good enough parent to be able to handle it? That is definitely a fear that people have. And then as support-wise, people don't know what to do or say. Do they invite them on a play date? Well, they might need some time to recoup and, and chill out and become, do some healing and rebond as a family. The best thing you can do is find somebody who is a therapist that you feel comfortable with, that you go see yourself without your children to make sure they are the right fit for your family, and see if you can have someone who can walk alongside you. And if you can't afford it, there are hundreds and thousands of churches out there that have free counseling that would be happy to talk with you and at least be a mediator.
I know that's key as well, because I know we had talked about a little bit. Right now, a big topic is human trafficking and sex trafficking. Yes. And the children that are being exploited and taken. And what's happening is it's not just the big cities that are seeing it now. Mm-hmm. And so within the last few years, we've seen some really big sex trafficking and human trafficking rings be dismantled and shut down, where anywhere from 30 to 80 plus children have been returned home. And so that's an interesting scenario, because that's 30 to 80 plus families that have been affected. And what happens when they get home? Because when I get home, my best friend that was my best friend before I left may not be my best friend now.
Yes. I mean, none of you are the same people anymore.
Exactly. I've gone through enough. I've gone through things they've not gone through.
Yes.
And so the conversations are different.
Yes.
Everything is different. And those who have gone through sexual abuse, we already know that we already have things that you go through mentally. So you go through the low self-esteem. You go through trying to figure yourself out when it comes to your sexuality. You go through, there's so many different questions unanswered, and who wants to sit down and have that conversation?
Right. Luckily, there are some really specialized, wonderful places that deal specifically with children who have been in sex trafficking, that will help you and your family, help them to heal, help to reunite you. So thank goodness those are available. So that would definitely be something to look up if someone's going through something like that, or has a child that's missing for that reason and wants to get a jump on it and be prepared for when they come home. There are two aspects to it, because you've got the children's side, which is the side everybody's thinking about. What's happened to the children? What's going on with the children? And my side is more of the parent side, because until this time, no one cared about the parents. Not that they didn't care, but they're looking at, the child was taken, the child's been abused, the child's been this, and we're like, yeah, but these parents are going through every kind of torture possible, thinking of all the things that could be happening to their children, even when they're not. And they have to be taken care of so that when the child comes home, you don't have a broken child coming home to a broken parent. They have to be both on a healing path. And so that's why I wrote Strength for Parents of Missing Children. And even in it, I'm the oldest of many children in our family, and I have a tendency to be bossy, or I did when I was younger. So when I was writing it, I was like, I don't want to be bossy. That's not who I am anymore. But then I was like, but in that moment, when terror ensued, when I had no clue right from wrong, up from down, left from right, I just wanted someone to walk in and tell me, do this, do that, eat some food, get some rest, do whatever it took so that I could be prepared to fight for my child, to watch for them, to do what was necessary. I had to take care of me too, or I could not continue to fight for them. If I spent 23 hours out of the day on the computer, in the dark, in my house, trying to do everything I could that way for my child would come home to a broken parent. And so I actually, in the book, have daily checklists, and they change each week for 4 weeks There are like 30 days of checklists of what to do each day just to make it so that you can survive long enough to get your children home.
That's one of the things that I talked about as well when it comes to those moments, because you have the moments where you're sitting in your bed or laying in your bed and you're listening to your child have nightmares. You're running in the room because they're waking up dripping with sweat because of the things that they have been dreaming about. And those are the moments where we're like, we wish we could take it away from them, but we can't.
Yes.
And it feels horrible.
Yes. Any of us would change in a heartbeat places with our children and take the pain that they're going through so they wouldn't have to. And in both of our situations, we don't have that opportunity to do that. We don't have the choice to do that. But really, when I look at moms who are dealing with cancer and they've got a 2-year-old with tubes all over them and operation after operation after operation, I'm like, I wouldn't want to do that either. I would not trade my pain for yours. I would not want to have to look in my child's eyes as they were being hurt and pretend like it was okay. They wouldn't understand. And I wouldn't know how to explain to a 2-year-old how that helps them. I would not want to trade places with them. Each of our pain is hard.
Oh, and then you just took us to a whole nother topic, is the conversations. The conversations. A lot of parents now, they want to have guarded conversations. They're scared to talk about real topics. They're scared to, they're scared to ask their child what they went through. You have some that are, and then you have some that are, they want to know everything their child went through. But then you have some others that are just, they can't. Mm. It's painful.
Well, and finding the middle ground on that, because I've seen parents where like the child, returns from whatever scenario and they just want to grill them. I'm like, let the child breathe. Let them have a little bit of time to slowly relax and then be able to tell you things. And so the difference between the wall up, I don't want to hear any of it, and the difference of, tell me everything, you've been here for 5 minutes, I don't know your whole life story in the time that you've been gone. What? Like finding a balance. How are you able to find a balance?
So I think for me, it was when certain situations came up, having conversations in the moment.
Yes. I love it. That's perfect.
In the moment. I felt like that was a doorway to, okay, let's take this a little further. Now, I've had some conversations come up because they're all teenagers now, and I'm just like, was I ready for this conversation?
Yeah. Yes.
Was I really ready for this conversation? But it also fosters a communication between you and your child. And we know that right now, with everything that's going on with our youth, the biggest piece is lack of communication. Mm-hmm. Kind of like they should know this. They should know that. We don't really have to discuss it because it's something they should already know. Well, if they're supposed to already know it, who are they knowing it from? Right.
What bits of information do they have? But I actually want to touch back on something you had said earlier about the sex trafficking and the rings that are being busted. I think one of the things that stands out to me the most is that, it's things like doctors and police officers and teachers. And I'm just going, parents, be aware of who you're leaving your child with. Don't take them to the doctor and let them go in by themselves. Okay. There's no reason they need to be in the doctor by themselves. There isn't. There is nothing they're going to talk with their doctor about that you should not already have a relationship with your child to the point that they can talk with you about. If your child says, hey, mom, I do need to talk with the doctor for a minute by myself, that's different. But when the doctor says you need to leave the room so I can talk to your child, you'd be like, no, you do not. And you talk with your kids ahead of time. You let them know, by this age, the doctor is going to ask you if you want to be alone with him. That doctor is a stranger. We do not know who he is. I don't know what he does on his off time. Do you really want to be alone with some strange man in a room? No? Okay, well, so when he asks you, what would your answer be? No, I don't want you to leave the room. Okay, then. Like, that's a discussion. You're talking with them and you're empowering them to know they have the authority to say no to somebody in authority. because it's those authority figures that get the best of children because they're like, oh, I'm an authority, you know, I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm a that. Parents, don't leave your children with anybody. You don't know them. I don't care what their job is.
That's a wow, because again, like we said, right now, we don't know. You don't even know your neighbor at this point. Yep. There's so many things that are going on. It's just like, it's scary.
Yeah.
Because you don't know people and you have to get to know people. But I think we've kind of, as a society, gotten to the point where it's close the blinds, shut the door and lock it. And if it doesn't have something to do with you, then leave it alone.
Yeah.
And so when these different sex trafficking and human trafficking rings are being busted, I think it's because you may have that one person that stands up and says, hey, something's not looking right over there. Y'all might want to check that out. One of them that was busted in Philadelphia was a motel. And the thing about it is after it was, you know, dismantled, people in the area were like, well, we knew things were going on there. We knew something wasn't right. And we just live like this?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Like, no, that's not it. We need to get back to, if we see something, say something. And because you don't know whose child you're going to be saving.
Yeah. And really, it takes courage. You know, you have to step out. Like you just said, they did a study a long time ago on there was somebody that died in New York City, and everybody heard it and nobody called the police. And 100 different people in these apartments heard it. And the reason, then they found out and talked to everybody why they didn't call the police. Everybody thought, oh, people just didn't care, or they just that and the other. They didn't call because they knew 99 other people heard it and they figured somebody else would call. And so that's a big thing that we see is that people, you know, will they help somebody on the street? We're like, oh, why should I help them? There's, 30 other cars behind me. They'll help them. We have that mentality that somebody else will do it. And sometimes it just takes somebody actually at making the action and making the phone call, even if it's anonymous, saying, hey, you need to check something out. Something's not right. It could change everything.
Definitely. And then I know about the other side. So now we've gone through this traumatic experience. We've hopefully learned something in the process that we can share and help with others. What is the next piece? Because I know that you're partnering with, law enforcement to do some things. So what's the next piece after that?
Right now, I think the big thing is letting law enforcement know what's happening in the homes, what's happening in the courts, so that they're more aware of it when they are going to places, when they're dealing with the parental issues and things like that. And also to let the people within the prisons have access to the resources and be able to understand that we can stop the cycle if we can change the people that are in the prisons, because that's a huge, people who are in foster care have children that are in foster care. People who are in prison have children who go into prison. And it becomes this cycle of what you know, and really speaking into other people's lives, hope and change and transformation and loving other people can make a big difference. So I think that's the big thing right now for me. I'm trying to get the book into every prison. So.
Wow. That's a powerful movement to be able to have it in every prison and have it be something that's a resource for those who are in prison. I know when it comes to the foster care system, there are a lot of parents who are in prison who can't, see their children on a regular basis. Even on Facebook, there was recently a video of a father and a daughter having a conversation. And I believe he had just gotten out of prison. He had just gotten out of prison, but they went live and did this conversation, this honest conversation between this little girl and her father. And not all children get to have that conversation.
No, they don't. And really, like I said, there is no other resource. There is no other help for this. And basically, I can't make someone's problems disappear. Okay, I wish I would also make my problems disappear. That's not going to happen. But I can offer tools to change your life. I can offer tools to show you hope. I can offer tools to help you see a better future for you and for your kids. And regardless of the outcome, regardless of whether your child makes it home or whether they don't, you will be the best version of yourself. And that is what I can offer.
And that's saying so much. I appreciate all that you've done and are doing, because it is so needed. It is so necessary when we think about these parents that are going through, and God forbid they be a single parent.
I know.
That just makes it 10 times harder.
Yeah. How can I complain when I know there are single parents going through it? I can't.
It's like, it's so difficult. And you hear some of these stories, like I think it was a few years ago where we heard about the girls who someone had been walking by the door and heard a girl yelling through the door, and he broke the door and got the girl out and ended up saving 3 girls who had been kidnapped and had been at this house. But the neighbors had seen them, in the yard and everything, and nobody was the wiser. But it takes that one person to say, okay, something's not right. Let me do something to change it. Yeah. And so I applaud you, the speakers, the authors that come out and tell their story. And that's when it comes to domestic violence, molestation, abuse, rape, kidnapping, sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug abuse, any person that has gone through something and made it out to the other side, whatever that looks like, because it's not going to look like the same for everyone.
Right.
But whatever that looks like, you definitely have something to offer the world.
Yes. You know it, and I know it.
You have something. You have that wisdom. You have that smile. You have that hug. You have that laughter. I know for me, it's I'm always giggling because I'm silly. That's just me. But if you're in my presence, you're going to laugh at some point.
That's right.
You're going to have some type of giggle moment in my presence, because I feel as though for so many years I went without laughter.
Yes.
I went without laughter. And then when I found that joy again, I said, no, I can't go without this anymore. So that's what it is. I
applaud you, Altaviz. You are doing an incredible amount of really positive work, making a difference in people's lives and showing them what can happen when you choose to make a different choice with your life instead of being a victim, being a victor.
That's it. And that's what it is. It's all about that choice. And so, guys, when we think about the journey that we've been through, we often say, I want to write a book about it. We often say, I want to tell my story. I want to speak. I want to do something. Don't think that the only options are to write a book or to speak.
Yes.
Advocates are needed in every area.
Yep.
Advocates are needed. Advocates are needed for the children. Advocates are needed for the parents. Advocates are needed for the communities.
Yes.
So don't think that the only way that your story is heard and the only way that you can help is by writing a book or being on a stage. That may not be your journey.
That's right.
But advocates, because we think about, that they now, the system, they have advocates that I guess they're supposed to be helping.
Those of us that appeared behind the curtain know how effective all that is.
It's like they're supposed to be helping, but it's kind of not as effective as you think. It's more like they show up and that's what it is. They show up.
Oh,
they're present. That's what it is. But not because, they don't want to do more, but think about if they have 100 cases and them being emotionally tied to all 100 cases.
It would crush them.
It would crush them. They wouldn't be able to handle it. One of the things, when I was going to school for social work, one of the things I had to interview a social worker, and she said, and this was in Philadelphia, and they have caseloads of 100 children. She said, there is such a high turnover rate because you get burnt out.
Yeah.
You get attached to the families. You get attached to the scenario. You get attached to the children, and then something horrible happens, or you may have something good happen, or, there's so many different things. And my mother, she was in foster care, and I remember one of the most heart-wrenching moments was we were at a ceremony where they were, celebrating some of the foster parents, and they always have, tables of children who are waiting to get adopted. And I was looking through the table and I saw this little girl, and I screamed. I snatched the paper and ran over to my mother. It was the little girl that she had in our home. And she had went to be with the grandmother because they were supposed to be getting, adopted by the grandmother, right. But they had been put back in the system. And I was devastated. And, the social worker for that particular child came over, and, we sat down, we talked. Like, I really was like shaking.
Right.
I was like, but they were going home. No, this is not how this was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But that's the conversation that happens in all of these situations is, this is not how this was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. This wasn't my happy ever after. This was not my kingdom and my castle and my carriage with my little mice turning into horses. Like, this is not how this was supposed to be. Yeah. And so when we think about the social workers and the advocates and the police, and they go through a lot.
Yeah. Well, and even as I talk to the police, the amount of PTSD and things they go through when they're breaking child sex slave rings, like, they have to see things. They have to see video and pictures and find people, and it affects them. I mean, how do you walk away from seeing that when you're not even, trying to see it? You're just trying to rescue people. How does that affect you, and how does it affect your family? So we're in a really broken world, and it's hurting.
It definitely is, but there's silver lining to it, guys, because
yes.
we have people like Marie who are
Altavides
standing in the gap, standing in the gap and saying, okay, I know it's hard. I know this gap is kind of big, so let me stand here to try to help a couple people over it. And I may not be able to help everybody, but there's somebody that I can help.
Yes. Well, and we don't want to always do it either. I mean, I want to be a private person in my home and not be doing any of this. Okay. I want to be left alone. And yet I feel like this is where God has called me to be, and that I'm supposed to be ministering to people like this. And instead I minister to, hundreds of thousands of people. I'm like, who knew?
Exactly. I laugh because I'm like, I'm an introvert, people. I would so much rather be sitting on my couch listening to a book on Audible.
Absolutely.
But instead, I'm traveling to cities all over and standing before crowds of women. And this is the thing. I'm standing before women who some have never told their story. Yeah. They've never talked about it. They've kind of buried it or decided that it didn't exist. They could close their eyes and it wasn't real. And that's who I'm standing in front of. So it's not always easy.
No. And you and I met at an event. That's how we've gotten to know each other. We're both going, okay, I don't want to be doing this, but I have a message and it helps people and I'm going to get out there. And so we giggle and laugh and have a good time. And people wonder, like, how can you smile and how can you laugh when this terrible thing has happened? Mm-hmm. And I'm just going, I was reading the Bible yesterday and just really, it stood out to me when it said, be joyful in hope. Normally I read that, I'm like, be joyful in hope. This was like, no, be joyful while you're hoping for something better. And be patient in affliction. Be patient while you're hurting and being hurt. Be patient because God will come through.
Yes, yes, indeed. I laugh because when I did my interview with Steve on Reinvention Radio, he said, and he listened to the story and he just was like, but I didn't see that in you
Yes.
when I saw you in California. He said the one thing that stood out about you was your smile. He said your laughter, your smile. He said it just goes to show that we don't look like what we've been through. And I said, yeah, because my smile is how I've been able to get through. I'm that silly parent that sends random strange text messages to my children. And
I love it.
They tell me that they're coming home early for a snow day. And I tell them I'm going to the hardware store to change the lock. Those types of things.
Yes. I send my kids the okay sign, but I tell them it means I'm going to pinch you in the butt. And they're like, Mom, stop texting me that. Stop trying to pinch my butt on the text. I'm like, it's funny. I love it.
It's amazing. It's joy because that's something that they're going to forever go on and remember. You remember when Mom used to send us those text messages?
That's right.
I had to laugh last week and I did a blog post about it because I have one that she loves K-pop, so I'm always sending her like stuff in Korean, and I have one who's learning French, so I'm sending her stuff in French. And they said that they were coming home early, so I'm texting one in French, I'm texting one in Korean, and I'm using Google Translate because I'm a big girl. I know how to use Google Translate, and Google Translate did me wrong. So one child got a text that said, what the hell? When you come home, clean the pork. And the other one got a text that said, when you come home, clean the pig. Now, the funny thing is we have a guinea pig. So that
oh my gosh.
And the responses were, I love you. The other one said, stick to Spanish, I love you. But when they came home was when they told me, I don't know what you did. I don't know what you were trying to say. I didn't know how to respond to it.
Oh my gosh.
But that's what I've come to love those moments. I'm not perfect, okay? I can't speak Korean and I can't speak French. That's Spanish, pretty much. But that's about it, guys. So
oh my gosh.
It's finding those moments to enjoy.
Yeah. And still find joy in the midst of everything that's happened. People can go through the Holocaust and still come out of it and live and have a life afterward. Then who are we to complain for the things that we've gone through?
That's right. We see people every day. I used to say that it was strange that people always wanted to talk to me. Like people would talk to me about their whole life story. They would just start talking and I'm just like, introvert here. Okay. But I've found that people find some peace when they talk to me. Yeah. They do. They'll come in and talk about the strangest of conversations that are like so off for me because I'm like, I don't know this person.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it.
And it's interesting. You just go, okay, but it was preparation for where I am now because I get people that I still don't know that come and tell me, thank you for sharing your story. I've been through that. And you sharing your story helped me.
Yes.
I just go, okay. So it's okay that people want to talk to me. No stranger danger there. All right.
I love it. Well, thanks for having me on, Altaviz. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your story. Let everyone know how they can get in contact with you and how they can get your books.
You can find me at mariewhiteauthor.com, and that's Marie White, spelled like the color, author.com. And they can actually go there today and get a free copy of one of my books called Changing Your Life in Just 10 Days, which is over 10,000 people have read that book, but it's for free on the website for your watchers and listeners. So they are welcome to go on there.
That is awesome. I thank you so much for coming on. And guys, you guys know, thank you, because without you, there would be no Speakeasy podcast. There would be no conversations to be had. So I appreciate you guys, those who come in and share, those who come in and comment. I love you as supporters. And If you have any questions, by all means, reach out, connect. Those of you who are speakers and authors, I would love to have you on the podcast. Go to bit.ly/speakeasy podcast, all lowercase, for you to be able to set up your time to be on the show. Until next time, guys, don't forget to press it out. See ya.